Hello, and welcome to my channel, Keen Reads. My name is Jared. It's been a while since I've posted. I've just had a lot going on in my life, and really I've just been reading and not feeling like making videos. But I thought today would be a good day to make one. Better late than never, but this is going to be my reading projects for 2026 and probably into 2027 as well. Because there's no way I read all of this year, because there will be other books that I read and other things that interest me throughout the year. And who knows, some of these projects I might just abandon completely. But I think I have 5 projects. I don't know. I think 5, but we'll find out. So let's go ahead and get started. First one is a continuation of a project I've been doing since July of last year, and that's reading through the complete works of Shakespeare. I think this is volume 29 of the Art in Shakespeare, which is the edition that I've been reading through, and it's my current read. So it's The Merry Wives of Windsor. I'm still on the introduction, but it looks like a pretty short play. But like I said, this is play 29 of 44 volumes that the Art in Shakespeare breaks up Shakespeare's complete works. And yeah, gonna slow down on my Shakespeare reading. I think I went through probably half of his works from July to December of last year. Going to slow down to maybe 1 or 2 a year. I mean, 1 or 2 a month for the rest of this year to hopefully finish by December of this year. So this is only the second Shakespeare that I've read this year, but again, trying to slow down. Next, we have some 20th century poetry. So at the end of last year, alongside my Shakespeare reading, I was reading a lot of poetry. So Carl Sandburg. What else was I reading? Some T.S. Eliot, Dylan Thomas, various 20th century poets, and through them I kind of got linked up to some other poets that I've been meaning to read, or new poets that I had never heard of. So I'm calling this project number 2 20th century poetry. We have Pablo Neruda. This is actually a book I've had for a while, and it just kind of fits into this project that I started. As you can see, I've read part of it, but I want to try to read through this in the coming year. Another book that I've had for a while that kind of fit into this project is the Collected Poems of H.D., so a modernist poet. That, again, I've had for a while, and just thought that this was a good time to get around to it, because I can fit it with some other books that I want to read this year. And the 2 books that really tipped off this project and made me want to dive into this area a little more are 2 books that I attained at the end of last year. So we have T.S. Eliot, The Complete Poems and Plays. I'll read the plays, but obviously I'm more interested in the poems at this point. I've read a small selection of his plays or of his poems before. But really it was just The Wasteland and I think 4 quartets. Maybe there was a couple others in there, but reading his complete works, I read a biography of a poem last year, the biography of The Wasteland, which describes his writing of it. And now I want to kind of dig back into The Wasteland and reread it now that I've read the biography. We have The Complete Poems of Mary Ann Moore, another modernist poet. I just found this really nice copy at a bookstore near where I live. Actually, it's not near where I live. I actually drove to Rochester one weekend and went to a bookstore there, which is about an hour away from where I live. But found this really nice copy of The Complete Poems of Mary Ann Moore. A book that I also want to read during this time that I actually forgot to get off the shelves is The Complete Poems of Elizabeth Bishop. So that's project number 2. Project number 3 is to fill in some gaps in my reading history. So there's just some major works that I've never read. Well, there's a ton of major works that I haven't read. But I just picked 3 that I think are the most important right now to kind of fill in the gaps of my reading history. And these 3 are The Divine Comedy by Dante. I think 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago now, I read through The Inferno and part of Purgatorio, and then just kind of lost steam. Now I think I'm in a better place to read it. I think will be able to appreciate it a little bit more now that I'm a little bit more versed in longer poems and poetry in general. So looking forward to reading this. Not sure when I will get to these. Maybe more towards the middle of the year once I've made some headway on some of my other projects. But again, planning to read this from the beginning, so I'll reread the Inferno. We have John Milton's Paradise Lost. So late 1600s poetry, epic poem, just again, really foundational. And then Ovid's Metamorphosis. So these are 3 books that have been on my shelves for a long time that are very important to the history of literature and the development of literature that I think will, knocking these off my list, not only will they be enjoyable in and of themselves, but I think they'll kind of unlock some other things in other books that I read. That's project 3. Yeah, so there's 5 projects. The next project, obviously I'm not going to get through all of these books this year. So maybe these are just reading projects that I'm working on that will take several years. But I want to read through the Romantic poets. So these are poets around the early 1800s. So we have the complete poems and select letters of John Keats. I also have a book that goes through some of his letters as well, with some commentary. But I've never read actually any of the Romantic poets. It's kind of a huge space in my, a huge gap in my reading history, similar to Paradise Lost, The Metamorphosis, and Dante's Inferno. So I think, especially for the books that I have typically been reading lately, so like modernism is area I find myself reading a lot of, and also modern poetry, modern meaning like 20th century and onwards, were hugely influenced by the Romantic poets, and that's just an area I've literally never read anything in. So hoping to dip my toes into some Romantic poetry this year. So I've just been picking up books to prepare for that. So we have the complete poems and selected letters of John Keats. We have Percy Shelley's major works. We have the works of Lord Byron. I'm not sure if this is a complete works or not, if anyone is familiar with these editions. I know one of the antique bookstores that I go to has a ton of these versions, but I don't know much about them. Actually, I don't even know anything about them. So not sure if this is a complete works or a selected works. But this is Lord Byron. I also have a book of his letters with some commentary that I'll probably read alongside this. We have Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who probably interests me the most of the Romantic poets. Well, him and the next poet. But we have his Samuel Taylor Coleridge's complete poetical works, as well as the collected works of Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Biographia Literaria, which is some of his prose writings. This is actually what really interests me more than Coleridge's poetry, I think. And I think I've actually read a Coleridge poem. Is The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, I believe is Coleridge. So I've read that in another volume of poetry that I had. And then the last poet, and the one that I'm probably interested the most out of these 5, there's really 6 Romantic poets, but I don't have anything by William Wordsworth. So that's kind of a gap in my library that I need to pick one up to be able to finish this project. But the complete poetry and prose of William Blake. I really love this version. I enjoy his paintings, and some of his like illuminated books, or not illuminated books, I guess just his illustrated books. This one doesn't have any of his illustrations in it. There is another complete version of his illustrated works, but I wanted to make sure I had both his poetry and his prose. So this is probably the best version that I could find for what I want to do. So that's project number 4. So we have the Romantic poets, 20th century poetry, Shakespeare, and then filling in the gaps of my reading with those major works. The project I'm looking forward to the most, and the one that I've started already besides Shakespeare, is reading through everything Virginia Woolf wrote. So I just scroll eBay sometimes and just see what kind of cool books there are out there, because there's so many books I've never heard of. And I found this complete set of the Diaries of Virginia Woolf. So these are not in order right now, but they are, it's 5 volumes, 1 through 5. And it was a little expensive, so I was like, maybe I won't buy it. But then my wife surprised me and got me this for Christmas. So the Complete Diaries of Virginia Woolf. And in order to prepare for that, I bought a biography of Virginia Woolf, which is what I'm currently reading right now. I'm a little over halfway through it, but this is by Hermione Lee. From what I can tell, this is probably the best biography of Virginia Woolf. There is another one that is written by Quentin Bell, who is actually Virginia's nephew. So I thought that would be interesting from like a historical perspective, because he's someone who grew up around Virginia Woolf. But I wanted something maybe a little bit more objective by a professional biographer. So that's why I went with this Hermione Lee edition. My local bookstore that I go to probably the most has a pretty cheap copy of the Quentin Bell biography, but it's also very thick, and I don't know if I want to commit to reading 2 biographies of Virginia Woolf. I'll probably pick it up eventually, just because she's slowly becoming one of my favorite authors, and I kind of, whenever I develop a favorite author, I kind of want to just read everything about them and everything they've written, which is what the case is with Virginia Woolf right now. So currently reading through this, and the reason I wanted to read through this was to give context to the diaries. So I'm not going to know who she's writing to in her diaries, who she's writing about, what she's talking about, the events that she's discussing, unless I read a biography first, is my idea. So reading this as context for the diaries. And then I found pretty cheap through eBay, actually. They were not expensive. They weren't terribly expensive, maybe like 20 or 30 bucks a piece. Some cheaper than that. The complete letters of Virginia Woolf as well, because I was like, well, if I have the diaries, might as well get the letters too. So this is 6 volumes. So volume 6, volume 5, volume 4. Just going to set these down. 3, 2, and then volume 1. And these go all the way back to 1888. So pretty interesting, because Virginia Woolf was born in 1882. So she's, from the age of 6, we have all of her letters. So again, picked those up too, because I was like, if I have the diaries, might as well get the letters too. And they weren't crazy expensive. And what was I going to say? I don't know. Well, we'll keep going with the books. So then I was told myself, and I convinced myself that, well, if I have the diaries and if I have the letters, I might as well get the complete essays as well. So I picked up volume 1 through 3 of the Andrew McNeely essays. This is a 6-volume set. Actually, volumes 1 through 4 were by Andrew McNeely, and volumes 1 through 4 were by Andrew McNeely, and then volumes 5 and 6 were by Stewart N. Clark. So I got these 3 for about $50 total. They were all together. Not the best condition, but again, I don't really care too much about the condition of my books. As long as they have like working dust jackets that aren't too terribly torn up, that's really what I look for in a book, at least a hardcover. So there's those. The volumes 4 through 6 are very difficult to find. There's a copy of volume 4 online. There's 2 copies that I could find online from Abe Books for about $300 a piece, which is way outside my price range right now, and probably ever. But I convinced my wife to let me get it if, under these 2 circumstances, that I find volumes 5 and 6 as well. So every day I checked the internet for volumes 5 and volume 6. I was able to find a copy of volume 6 for pretty cheap, actually, from Italy. I'm still waiting on it in the mail. We'll see if it ever comes. But volume 5 I cannot find anywhere on the internet. I can find paperback copies of volume 5, which I'll probably end up getting at some point, just to be able to read them all straight through. So if I get through volumes 1 through 3 before I find a copy of 5, I'll probably get a paperback copy of that and a paperback copy of 4, which are both available for like 20 or 30 bucks on eBay. But again, I have a hardcover of version 6, hopefully coming from Italy. And I have no leads on a hardcover copy of volume 5. But my wife said if I ever find a hard copy version of volume 5, then I can go ahead and pull the trigger on the $300 hardcover copy of Volume 4 just to be able to complete my set. So that's kind of the dream right now. But again, absolutely no leads on a hardcover for Volume 5. I found one that was for sale in Pakistan, but when I went through to order it, and it was pretty cheap actually, they said they only deliver to like the Middle East. So that was a dead end. But in addition to reading all of her nonfiction writings, I was like, might as well finish up what I have left of her fiction. So far this year, well, let's go through what I've read already by her. So before this year, I had read Orlando, which was actually the first Virginia Woolf that I read. I've read To the Lighthouse. I've read The Waves, which is actually probably my favorite book by Virginia Woolf. I had read Mrs. Dalloway. And I have read the essay A Room of One's Own. So to fill in the gaps, so far this year, I have read Flush, which is a delightful little biography of a dog. Elizabeth Barrett Browning's dog named Flush. Really enjoyed this. The Voyage Out, which was Virginia Woolf's first novel, and actually probably my second favorite book that I've read by her. Behind the Waves. Actually my first 5-star read of the year. And I'll probably end up rereading the other novels that I've already read that I just talked about, just so I can reread everything she's written, because none of her novels are very long. I think The Voyage Out is longer than any of the other novels that I've read. And I've also read this brand new book, The Life of Violet, so 3 early stories by Virginia Woolf, and these are the first 3 stories that she ever wrote. A more complete or definitive edition of them was actually just discovered, I think, in like 2022, and this was published at the end of last year. So kind of cool that there's still some new stuff coming out from Virginia Woolf. And then books that I have picked, I've also read the complete shorter fiction of Virginia Woolf this year. So that's her short stories from actually just after this. So these 3 are not in here because these were just discovered in a more complete edition. I think they were known about before, but they were kind of just journal entries or things like that. And then they found more of like an edited version that was suitable for publication. So after these 3 stories, this is every other short fiction that she had written throughout her life. So I think this goes from like 1908 or something like that to 1941 when she passed away. And then I have 4 other books by her that I have not read. So 3 Guineas, which is another essay collection. Or it might be 1 essay. I think it's 1 essay, actually, 3 Guineas. I also don't know if that's how you say guineas. It's like a currency in England. Between the Acts, which is her last novel. Jacob's Room, which is her 3rd novel and her first experimental novel. And then Night and Day, which is her 2nd novel. So I plan on reading, after I finish the biography, Night and Day next, then Jacob's Room, and then I'll probably reread her novels in order that I have already read them. So after those 2, I believe after those 3, so The Voyage Out, Night and Day, Jacob's Room, I believe it goes Mrs. Dalloway, To the Lighthouse, The Waves, Orlando. And then her last 2 novels, one of them I don't have, is The Years, and then Between the Acts, which I just showed you. That's most of what she's written. So I still need The Years. And then there's a couple of miscellaneous things that I need just for my own completeness, OCD's sake. So she wrote a play called Fleshwater, which, again, is available on eBay for pretty cheap. It's like $15 or something like that. So I'll pick that up eventually. Moments of Being, I believe is what it's called, which is a collection of essays that are posthumous, including her Sketch of the Past. So I don't believe that those are included in the collected essays. They might be. And then there's also a collection of her early diaries. So the diaries version that I have starts in 1915, but there's a collection of her diaries that are from before that, from her like juvenilia. So want to get that. And then she has a biography as well of Roger Fry, who is a painter that she interacted with that I'm now learning quite a bit about from the biography I'm reading about. So those are the 5 projects that I have for this year. I will not finish them all. We'll see if I even start some of them. But really, the ones I'm most excited about are Shakespeare and the Virginia Woolf Project. So those right now are occupying all of my my time and my brain. What reading projects do you guys have for this year? Let me know. I'd be excited to hear about them. Again, sorry this is kind of late, but I've just kind of been enjoying reading and not making videos, and now I want to make videos again. We'll see if this is a one-off or if I continue to make videos regularly. I kind of ran out of ideas. So if you guys have any ideas or videos that you want to see from me, please leave them in the comments. Thanks again for watching.